Okay, today we're going to talk about the 7 signs that your ex-boyfriend wants you back. Now, perhaps one of the most challenging parts about my job is trying to find something new to add to the conversation. So many times when you look at relationship advice, you're seeing kind of the same advice plastered from website to website, video to video, podcast to podcast. And I don't like to be part of that perpetuating cycle. I always like to add at least something new to the equation. And so probably one of the best ways to do that is by not giving my advice, but actually interviewing people from my private Facebook support group and asking them what signs they have experienced when it comes to their ex-boyfriends actually trying to get them back. What is common? And so that's what I did for this video. I surveyed many different women and asked them, hey, what are some of the signs that your ex-boyfriend wanted you back and you actually got them back? And I got lots of different answers, and essentially I got so many answers, I picked the 7 top answers or reasons that an ex will exhibit when they want you back. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But first things first, if you haven't already, probably the number one question that you should answer is whether or not you should be trying to get your ex-boyfriend back. Now, luckily on my website, www.exboyfriend.com, I've put together a special quiz designed to answer this exact question for you. It's a free 2-minute quiz, basically designed to tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back so you know you're not wasting your time. Now, all you have to do if you want to take the quiz is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on it. It's that simple. Okay, with that out of the way, let's begin. Sign number 1, they reach out to you often. So once you come into our program, you'll hear me talk a lot about this concept of charting your progress. You see, I try to look at situations in a scientific manner, and oftentimes one of the best ways to do that is to tell my clients to actually chart everything conceivable. How many text messages they are sending, how many times your ex is responding to your text messages, who is initiating the text messages, what's the word count looking like, what is the type of text message you're using, is that text message working or not? There's a lot of different things that you can chart, but one of the interesting things that we've noticed over the years is exes who tend to want to come back will initiate conversations a lot more. Now, this is also where we kind of have to keep in mind that we're not looking for one-offs here, meaning your ex initiates one conversation and then you just kind of take that to the bank and assume that he's initiating all conversations. What we're looking for really are patterns. Essentially, you want to see a consistent pattern of him reaching out to you first. Now, the other thing I want to say here is this the be-all, end-all reason that an ex would want to take you back? No. In fact, you're going to find that each one of the 7 things that we're going to be talking about today isn't alone going to be enough to make them want to come back. It's just a symptom of that mindset. Let's move on to sign number 2. Sign number 2. They interact with you on social media a lot. Okay, so in sign number 1, I just got done telling you what we're looking for are patterns. And this is especially important to use for sign number 2, which has to do with social media. Now, when I say interacting with you on social media, what do I mean? Well, I don't mean Facebook stalking you, even though I am 100% sure that that's a highly likely scenario that's unfolding. They're probably paying attention to what you're posting. But what we're looking for isn't just one singular like to a picture or a comment to a picture, but a lot of different likes and comments over the course of a long period of time. That tells you more about their frame of mind than a singular one-off like or comment to whatever it is you are posting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And I think sometimes there's a tendency that people have, which is, wow, my ex responded to a comment, or my ex liked one of my photos, but they only liked one photo. And you have this tendency to just kind of make it bigger than it actually deserves to be. Again, what we're looking for here aren't one-offs, but patterns. Sign number 3, your ex sends you a gift. Now, if I would say there's anything super close to a be-all, end-all sign, it might be this one and one of the other signs that's about to come up. So why is sending a gift such a big deal? Well, generally speaking, it tells you the frame of mind someone is in when they're sending a gift. It's almost like, hey, pay attention to me. How many times have you, as a woman, been sitting at a desk only to get bundle of flowers? Maybe it hasn't happened to you, but I'm sure sometime in your life there's been a guy that you've had no interest in who sent you a gift to try to win you over. Now, most of the time it's looked at as this creepy thing. You feel kind of icky about the fact that there's someone who you have no interest in whatsoever sending you flowers. But when it's your ex, you have a much different idea about that because, well, sometimes you want that person to come back to you. And usually, people who get gifts sent to them by their ex-boyfriends are usually the ones who broke up with their ex-boyfriends. And it's almost their ex-boyfriend's way of apologizing for whatever the issues are or trying to make amends. Therefore, it's a pretty good sign that they are kind of wanting you back. Sign number 4. They ask to meet up continually. Okay, your ex-boyfriend is asking to meet up with you continually, and they do this in many different subtle ways, and usually it happens during a conversation that you're having with them after your no contact rule, where you're having these organic conversations back and forth, and they make some offhanded comment about, hey, we should do this sometime, or hey, we should do that sometime. I often call this or refer to this concept as future pacing. One of the subtle things that you'll notice ex-boyfriends do is make some reference to you and them in the future. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Or hey, do you remember that time we did that? Let's do that again. If they're asking to meet up with you though, it kind of advances that future pace to a much more convenient level. In other words, they're not going to usually ask like, hey, let's go out for a drink, or hey, let's go out and do this. They're going to sort of embed it into something else so it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it is a big deal. Anytime an ex-boyfriend is asking you out to see you in person, it's a pretty good sign that they want to rekindle things or at least have some interest with you romantically. Now, the one thing I will say here, the one little fly in the ointment when it comes to this has to do with friends with benefits. We've been getting a lot of this in our Facebook group recently where women go into these meetups initiated by their exes, and he smooth talks them and they sleep together, and then next thing they know they're in this friends with benefits type of a situation. It's important to kind of run your ex through a litmus test. Determine what their intentions are before you actually go out on the date. Probably the better thing though is if you determine their intentions are impure, meaning they just want you for sex, the best thing to do is not obviously to sleep with them, but also to end the date prematurely so it kind of shifts their focus into getting another meetup as opposed to having sex with you. Sign number 5, they unexpectedly show up. So lately we've been interviewing a lot of different success stories on our podcast and on our YouTube channel. Now the thinking behind this has always been the same. I'm coming into these interviews with no ego. I don't care if they used any bit of advice that I had. I'm literally looking at it almost like a scientific study where I'm trying to figure out what are people doing that's working versus what are people doing that's not working. And what was interesting is in one of the last success story interviews that I conducted, this exact sign occurred where the ex showed up unexpectedly. And usually that can be kind of creepy. I interviewed a lot of different people in our private Facebook group for this video to try to figure out what some of the signs were, and I got a lot of creepy stories about ex-boyfriends who they broke up with who showed up at their work or waited outside of their work for them to get out only to try to beg them to get back together. But we can also see the non-creepy factors where you and your ex just kind of live near each other, you're frequenting the same areas, and you just consistently run into them. And there's also a really interesting reason or thing we can take from this, which is what if you work with them? What if you see them consistently? That's kind of works into your favor in this really odd way. Now, there are definitely negatives to working with or seeing your ex consistently. There are also positives negatives, and I think people often overlook those positives. But let's get back to the matter at hand. If your ex-boyfriend shows up unexpectedly and it's this consistent pattern, it's almost very clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to rekindle things because they are literally physically moving their body to be near you. Sign number 6, having them say, "Hopefully, I'll see you around." This is kind of 4D level chess future pacing, if you want to kind of put it that way. So how does this work? Well, let's say that you and me are in the middle of an organic conversation. Conversation's going really well, you know, we're vibing. I'm talking about things that interest me, you're talking about things that interest you, you're showing an interest in what I'm interested in, I'm showing an interest in what you're interested in, and around it goes. So we're on the phone, let's say, for about 30 minutes, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Things seem to be going really well. And then all of a sudden I say, "Hey, I have to go." But before I hang up, I drop this on you. "Hey, hopefully I'll see you around. Bye." What is going on there? This is the 4D level chess move of future pacing. Now, in a few signs ago, I introduced the concept of future pacing, basically taking you and your ex, and one of you is basically talking about seeing each other in the future, or doing something together in the future. Well, one of the best ways that you can kind of get inside their mindset is listening for these Freudian slips, these small little, what seem like offhand comments that really mean more than they actually appear. And this is what one of these comments is. "Hey, hopefully I'll see you around," or, "You know what, I'll be seeing you." Those are comments that basically tell you, I will or want to see you again in the future, but I'm just too afraid to come out and say it like an effective communicator. That's kind of what dating really is. Dating is kind of a game. And what's interesting is the game completely shifts when you get into a relationship, because then you almost need to have your walls down and share and communicate properly. But in dating, when it comes to playing hard to get and trying to get someone to become attracted to you, these games get embedded in us. But sometimes we can't help but let a little Freudian slip out on what we really want to have happen. And that's what can happen here. Sign number 7. They ask if you're with anyone at the moment. It's never cool to see your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend move on to someone else. In fact, there's nothing that can infuriate the human heart more than this actually happening. And having an ex basically ask you flat out, "Hey, have you been seeing anyone?" or "Hey, are you with anyone at the moment?" is an indicator that they are worried about that outcome. It's almost like they can't help themselves but ask. They're trying to stay cool, but they just can't help themselves. And I've had personal experience with this, not in the way you would think. You see, in high school, I had my very first girlfriend, but I was not what you would say a good influence on her. I would often skip classes and break rules. Now, what does that have to do with this? I promise you it has something to do with this. One day, I decided, hey, I would like to spend more time with my current girlfriend. So I decided that I was gonna skip my track and field class, which is just basically at the end of the day, instead of going to work out and run like a madman around the track, I was gonna skip and get my ex-girlfriend, she wasn't my ex at the time, she was my real girlfriend at the time, to skip her class, and we were going to be together. So that's what I did. I convinced her to do that. She was a bit of a goody two-shoes, so it did take some convincing on my part, but we did. We went off, we had a good time, and then all hell broke loose. You see, Mrs. Goody Two-Shoes went and blabbed to her parents. She felt guilty about it, I guess, so she talked to her parents about feeling bad about skipping, and then of course the parents give the patented he's a bad influence type thing. But me, being the forward thinker that I am, realized that her parents and my track coach knew each other. And I got worried because her parents could potentially be vindictive towards me because I corrupted their baby angel girl, that they would actually talk to my track coach and get me kicked out of track because I skipped. And I had been warned about skipping track before, so that's a whole thing. We'll get into that later. So anyways, I came up with this plan. My plan was to say nothing, plead the fifth, whatever happens, happens. But when things like this get inside of you, they just gnaw at you. You know, you just have to ask. You just have to figure out and try to make a comment to see like what's gonna happen to me? What will my fate be? So the next day at school, I went up to my track coach at the end of the day and I basically came up with the most awesome lie. Hey, I showed up late to track yesterday. I wanna make sure that you counted me. This is my way of kind of getting it over. My coach, he looks at me, stares long and hard and decides, yeah, I got you counted. But I think I tripped up his filter. This is the first time I had ever done anything like that. And of course, later that day, the parents called, talked to him, told him that I had convinced their perfect baby angel to skip. And the coach realized that I had lied to him. He pulls me aside and basically says, you're kicked out of the track team. Now, I was only kicked out for a week, but the whole thing would have been avoided if I had just probably shut up. Because I think my coach was more upset about the fact that I had lied to him as opposed to the fact that I had skipped. He was used to me skipping, but he was not used to me lying. And of course, he knew the girl I was dating, and so it just became this whole big thing. So here's my point. Having an ex-boyfriend ask you if you're seeing anyone else is a little like what happened to me. They just can't help themselves. They just have to ask. Hey there, thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you stop by my website, www.exboyfriend.com, and take my Ex Recovery Chances quiz. Simply look in the description link below this YouTube video if you want to find out how to take the quiz. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. I'll see you next time.